What is up, everybody? Welcome to game week. The Bills and the Cardinals, they're going to get it on Sunday in 5 days, but we got a lot to cover before then. Right here on Shout at Buffalo Bills Football Podcast. I am at Highmark Stadium. The Bills wrapped up practice a couple hours ago. We get to talk to a few players in the locker room. We got to talk to Sean McDermott. A lot of updates, a lot to get into. Ryan Talbot, how are you, my friend?
I am doing great, Matt. It is game week. I'm ready to go. Excited for this weekend. It's going to be a good time.
It is going to be a good time. And, I think one of the biggest questions that was remaining for the Buffalo Bills was who was going to start opposite Taylor Rapp at that other safety spot. And, everywhere else that you look, the Bills put out their first depth chart yesterday. There's a lot of positions where, okay, this is what I expected, right? The biggest question maybe on the front, AJ Epinesa over Von Miller, but Von Miller even said it today. Like, he's fine coming off the bench if that's what it ends up being, to kind of give way to a young player like AJ Epinesa to take a starting role. But the Bills officially named Damar Hamlin as the starter. He will start with at safety with Taylor Rapp on the back end. If you've been watching Shout all summer, Ryan, I don't think that you'd be very surprised. This wasn't a surprising development for me. He knows the defense the best. He is probably the healthiest at this point, and he's going to be in a spot at the beginning of the season with a huge opportunity playing alongside Rapp.
Yeah, look, had the Bills been healthy at safety all summer, Cole Bishop, Mike Edwards, I think it'd be someone different starting opposite Taylor Rapp. That's obvious. But Damar Hamlin, of those three, stayed the healthiest. He did suffer an injury, joint practice against Pittsburgh, missed some time, but he was still there all throughout training camp, whereas Bishop and Edwards missed so many reps on the field. It was Damar Hamlin that was working with the ones, getting all those reps. Like you said, he's the one that knows this playbook extensively, inside and outside. So in terms of this week one matchup, yeah, Damar Hamlin by far makes the most sense to start opposite Taylor Rapp. Once they see Mike Edwards and Cole Bishop practice a little bit more, prove that they can stay healthy, could I see that change? 100%. But for now, Hamlin is the right choice.
If you're watching on YouTube right now, welcome in. Hit that like button, subscribe as well. We're thrilled if you're watching on any platform, over on Facebook, on X as well. If you're listening on the audio platforms, leave a 5-star review, leave a few comments. We really appreciate that. Things are kicking up on the Insider text line, Ryan. All week long, we're going to have people covered with everything that's happening at the building here today. And I'm working on a big Craig Rousseau story right now for this weekend. Look, if you look across this roster, with Matt Milano out on the defensive side of the ball, especially, to me, I don't know if there is a guy who is under the microscope more than Greg Rousseau entering what's a contract year, a guy that for the first couple of years of his year, sitting at 17 and a half of his career, 17 and a half sacks. For as good as he's been, I think you can make an argument that he's probably underperformed to where that he was drafted as a pass rusher, right? Like rushing the quarterback. Like, I feel like this is a huge year for him, and I think that he's kind of set up to make a big jump. So we'll see if he can do that. All eyes are on him and, how he can contain Kyler Murray this weekend.
I'm excited for Greg Rousseau, excited to watch him play. This feels a little bit like what we were maybe anticipating out of Ed Oliver last year. And I think Ed Oliver went above and beyond anyone's expectations last season, but we were expecting that leap. We were expecting him to continue to climb his play. For Greg Rousseau, now is the time. We know that he has become a plus run defender. We've seen the flashes as a pass rusher. We know that he has the long wingspan that can bat passes. All that is great, but if he can take that next step as a pure pass rusher, getting after Kyler Murray, getting after these other quarterbacks on the schedule, getting those double-digit sacks, which I think he has the potential to do, that will be huge for this Bills roster. It'll be big for the back end of this defense with the uncertainty in the safety room. And, against a guy like Kyler Murray, you're hoping that they can get after him, make him uncomfortable. But to your point, Murray can run. He can take off with his legs if he gets away from that first defender. So the Bills do have to be able to contain him. If there's a team that can do it, I think it's Buffalo. We have seen kind of the Bills have this great blueprint over the years of containing running quarterbacks. We've seen what they've done to Lamar Jackson the last few games. We know that they can kind of hold Kyler Murray in that pocket and make him a pure passer, more of a passer than anything else. If that's what happens, I think that bodes well for Buffalo on Sunday.
Yeah, I also like to you were hitting on it there a little bit. Like I bring up Rousseau because to me the concerns about Damar Hamlin being in the starting position once again. I mean, if you go back 2 years, it was a lot of up and down right before the injury in Cincinnati. We covered that quite a bit. I think the fact that they went out and drafted Cole Bishop, brought in Mike Edwards after they lost Poyer and Hyde was to a degree to mitigate what they had, the problems that they already had on their roster. Now, I think that this is an opportunity for Damar Hamlin to maybe grasp a hold of a rotational spot. I don't know if he ends up being the starter long term. We'll see how it goes early in the season, but I'm not ruling out the possibility that he kind of takes the bull by the horns, if you will, and goes out and has a really good start to the season, makes a couple of big time plays, isn't in a spot where, some of the learning curve that he was experiencing in year 2. People forget that too, Ryan. Like he was a second year, 6th round draft pick thrown into a huge situation over the course of a season, filling in for a guy like Micah Hyde. I'm still bullish on what Damar Hamlin can be, and he's the most experienced guy in this specific defense. And I bring up Rousseau, like I mentioned, because if this line is doing what they're hoping it can do, that takes some of the pressure off the back end, which you kind of alluded to there.
Yeah, Damar Hamlin had his ups and downs when he saw significant reps a few years ago when he had to play due to injuries. That's to be expected when you're a young player, when you're sitting behind guys like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. You're not expecting your number to get called. Then everything that happens in Cincinnati last year was almost kind of like a redshirt season for him. Yeah, he's on the roster, but we're not going to play major reps with him on defense. He's playing special teams. We'll get him mixed in at times. A year removed from that, a full season removed from that, now is the time for Hamlin to show the flashes of what he did the first time he was able to get on the field. That athleticism, he made some nice plays. Like I said, ups and downs. There were times where he was not where he needed to be in coverage. But now that he knows this system that much better, 2 more, multiple years of experience added under his belt, I have high expectations that at minimum, this is a player that's going to be where he's supposed to be. He might not make those, great plays like what we saw in the playoff game years ago with Micah Hyde catching that interception in the end zone. It might not be the instincts of a Jordan Poyer and what we saw from him over the years. But as long as he is where he needs to be on the field, no blown coverage or assignments, the Bills can get by with that Taylor Rapp. And obviously those 3 cornerbacks, which are among the best in the league.
If you're watching on YouTube, like I mentioned, hit that like button. A lot of activity in the comments right now as we soar over 500 across all platforms. Teddy brings up, one of I think the top storylines here is you kind of look at the next couple of days leading into this opener is the one position where if I was power ranking biggest question marks on the field on Sunday against the Cardinals, I'd probably start at weak side linebacker with Dorian Williams. And Teddy asks, I really hope that Dorian Williams takes a huge step this year. Not confident in our safeties, and it will be super important to have a good linebacker play to make up for that. Down a couple, Charles says, wish we got to see Bernard and Milano play together. And I think that's going to be something really interesting to watch. Now, Terrell Bernard, the Bills, we could talk about the captain's announcement today, but Bernard talking about what this week has been like. He spent a lot of time with Dorian Williams. He's been spending a lot of times with Dorian Williams. The idea is that to him is what he can give Williams, because on game day, the communication between those two out on the field, Ryan, is going to be so important to what they're trying to do. And it's going to help put Dorian Williams in a position to make plays. If Bernard could take some of the pressure off with that high-end communication, knowing the situations before they're in them, I think that'll allow Dorian Williams to play a little bit freer, a little bit faster, but there might be a little bit of a learning curve there.
And man, doesn't that speak volumes in terms of the Bills naming Bernard one of their 2 captains today? The fact that he's already showing that leadership of, okay, it wasn't that long ago that I was kind of in Dorian Williams' shoes where I was in the mix for a starting job and won it. Now, Dorian Williams wasn't in the mix for a starting job. He was backing up Matt Milano, but Milano now is going to miss significant time, and he is that next man up. So now he is imparting that leadership of, I'm going to let, I'm going to be around Dorian Williams. I'm going to let him pick my brain. soak up anything that he can, because on the field, those two need to be communicating at all times on the same page, like we've seen over the years, whether it be Milano and Edmonds, whether it be, Milano and Bernard for that stint last year, pre-Milano injury. It's really important for these guys to be on the same page, and Bernard is already doing, I would say going above and beyond what he has to do heading into week one.
We're going to get into Stefon Diggs here in a few minutes. A big article drop from GQ. You and I were talking about it over text the last couple of days, and I think that would be a nice way to put a bow on that storyline. Well, at least until week 5, right?
Yeah.
When the Bills play the Houston Texans. We'll get to that in a few minutes. I want to go over the injury report, and it's crazy because 2 weeks ago, Ryan, I think that there was a little bit of panic setting in amongst Bills fans about the fact that a lot of guys were banged up. A lot of guys question marks around a couple of guys in terms of their status for the opener. We get to today. Sean McDermott delivers the injury report. Quentin Morris, who was dealing with that shoulder, I believe. Curtis Samuel with the turf toe. And then who was the other one off the top of my head that is back fully in practice? That was a little bit of a question mark. Cole Bishop.
Yeah.
Maybe the most important one. We can get to that in a moment. Mitchell Trubisky is the one guy that's still kind of hanging out there, dealing with the knee. He was limited in practice today. Sean McDermott basically said they're going to take it one day at a time. They're really, really healthy. I think Samuel's the most important piece for me in that he's trending in a great direction. Going to probably play on Sunday, which is a huge development.
Yeah, that is a massive development. That obviously, it's good seeing how healthy this team is in terms of the initial injury report. Having Javon Solomon did not participate due to the oblique, Mitch Trubisky limited, but 3 guys that you're going to be counting on a lot this season over the course of the year being full participants. It's a really encouraging sign. Quentin Morris, we've talked about his importance as tight end 3/special teams player. Curtis Samuel, obviously coming in, knowing this system under Joe Brady, having him active and ready to play in week 1, I think will be great for this offense in terms of a sneak peek of how I think they want to utilize him. Might not ever be a heavy volume guy in terms of targets, but there's going to be handoffs involved. They're going to be moving him around, putting him in the backfield, keeping the defenses off guard, and leading to some big plays and opportunities for Samuel in that stretch. And obviously Cole Bishop, getting the rookie as many reps as he can get on the practice field, the better for him after missing so much time this summer.
We got a new YouTube member. You could pay, I think it's like $1.99 or $2.99 a month, and all of your comments basically come flying in big, bold green letters on the side. So we always see them, gives you priority. It comes up in our starred section. So shout out to David, who's already an insider. Now he's all in on YouTube. He was asking us when the next time we were going to go a shout. If you have questions, drop them in the question box on the side here, and we will get to them over the course of this episode. And if you're in Buffalo and you're looking for something to do tonight, I'm heading over to Sunny Reds from here after this, podcasting with Pat Moran and Howard Simon, the legend, tonight. So I'm excited for that. All right, let's get to Stefon Diggs, Ryan, because hopefully everybody went and read the article in GQ. He talked a lot about the deterioration, I think is the best way to characterize it, his time in Buffalo. It started on such a high note back in 2020, and actually going back and looking at that season in 2021, the stats just jump off of Pro Football Reference at you. But basically insinuated that the Bills didn't want to get rid of him. It was him that wanted to kind of get out of town, get things shaking, as he said, because only he can get things shaking. What did you make of that to start? Because from my perspective, Brandon Beane, I think, wanted to keep him very professional. I went back and listened to his press conference after the trade happened, and I don't think he wanted to air the dirty laundry, but It felt like the Bills wanted to get out of the Stefon Diggs business just as much as Diggs wanted to get out of the Bills business. And I think that the reason for that more than anything is that they're willing to eat that $31 million cap hit just to not have him around anymore. We've seen the smiles. We've seen the looseness inside the building. I think Stefon Diggs is a huge personality, a good one, a positive one in a lot of ways. But for whatever reason, he tends to wear on an organization over time. It tends to, run its course.
It's not lost on me that Dawson Knox said that this is the most fun he's had as an NFL player this summer, this season. There is an anchor that has been, removed from the ship that is Buffalo, and that is Stefon Diggs. He is a talented player. He was loved by many of his teammates, still is. I know he still has a close relationship with James Cook, and I'm sure many other guys. But it wears on you. The sideline outburst, what maybe went on behind closed doors. It wears on you. It wears on your psyche. It wears on everyone from the players, the coaching staff, even the front office of, oh gosh, here we go again. Another tweet that might mean something, but it doesn't just come out and say it. And, yeah, maybe he wanted out. He said he was in the worst headspace of his career last year. Talked about how he didn't forget how to play football down the stretch. But he also made it seem like he was just not a featured part of this offense. And 80 targets over that stretch of time that he was talking about, give or take, tells you that he was still a big part of the game plan for over those final 10 games or around 10 games, what have you. It's just whatever reason when Joe Brady came along, especially, I think that Brady kind of said, you're still our best weapon, but we need to spread this ball around. It's what's best for this offense. There are games we have to run the ball. And when you are an alpha wide receiver, you are a guy that wants to help your team win. It probably rubs you the wrong way when you feel like you're being phased out. I don't think Buffalo phased him out intentionally. I think that led, though, to some of this, the headspace comments, how he felt, how he said the Bills didn't want to get rid of him. He wanted to move on. So be it. I think he's in a better place for himself right now, headspace-wise, named a captain with the Texans. I'm sure just like anything else, in due time, that could go sour. He's only under contract for this season based on how they reworked his deal. So maybe it'll be just everything comes up a bed of roses this year for him in Houston in terms of his personality, and it allows him to sign elsewhere or extend there. But he wore out his welcome in Buffalo. He wore on the teammates, wore on the front office, the coaching staff, and it's no coincidence that this summer it seemed like the offense was having a lot of fun celebrating all the scores at training camp. They seem so much looser this summer. Now, will that lead to another AFC East title? Will that lead to another playoff run? We'll find out here in a few months, but it certainly seems like the Bills aren't exactly too hurt about losing Stefon Diggs.
Right. And I think what happened last year and the way that things shifted is like sometimes you have to adjust to the change or the evolution of Father Time, right? Like, I mean, Stefon Diggs going into his year 30 season, he's not going to be the same guy that he was at 27 and 28. And I think the way that you have to operate in this league when things change, if you don't change fast enough, the league catches up. And what happened was the Bills weren't winning games despite some of his big time performances. And listen, go and look at his stats. The target share was off the charts through the first 7 or 8 games of the season. I mean, while Ken Dorsey was the offensive coordinator, he was getting 11, 12, 13, 14 targets per game, like in that range. And they drastically changed that. And that's when it made it harder on defenses to figure out, okay, we can take Stefon Diggs away, but they're still finding ways to move the ball and score points, whether it be with an improved running game. And maybe he just didn't like that. And maybe that's why he wanted to shake away. Don't forget, maybe it brought up, skeletons of the past, like in Minnesota when they wanted to start to run the ball more with Dalvin Cook and be a more run-centric offense or lean into that part of their identity. That's when Stefon Diggs started to be like, well, I want to get out of here. I want the targets. Here's the wild part about Stefon Diggs, Ryan. If he wasn't happy with last year and the target share or the lack or perceived lack of targets, how's he going to react now in Houston when they got to try to find a way to get all of those guys involved? So I'm very interested to see how this story arc develops, how CJ Stroud kind of fights against that sophomore slump that's happened for so many quarterbacks and with all those mouths to feed. Before it was just a bunch of young guys,
right?
Tank Dell, Nico Collins, a bunch of, they got Joe Mixon in the, what's happening when Joe Mixon now, and that's not looking like the Cincinnati Bengals offense the last couple of years. How is he going to be in the room? So I think the Bills are so excited. And I think the great place to, not necessarily that Diggs is gone, but what this could look like now. Khalil Shakir, like the way that he's talking about the freedom in this offense from week to week to let everybody kind of have a piece of this thing. You could feel what that is a departure from with what they were fighting against early last season, I think.
100%. And, I see some comments in here. Walter seems like a stretch with Dawson Knox's comments. I don't necessarily think it is a stretch. If you look at what the Bills model was this summer, everybody eats. That's another thing that tells me that, there's no egos here. You're going to be happy for your teammate if he goes off one week and then you go off the next. If it's James Cook and Ray Davis running the ball, if it's Dalton Kincaid 3 weeks in a row being that guy, there are no egos. Everyone just wants to win. Everyone wants to move the ball, score points, like you said, where I'm sure when you're winning, Stefon Diggs was happy in the Steelers playoff game late in the season, turning things around, getting back into the playoffs. But when they came short up again of winning the Super Bowl, I'm sure that's when everything kind of resonates and bubbles up. And like you said, he's arguably, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 on that team. There are going to be games where I think his targets will be low. I think that there will be games where they do lean on their running game and their running backs. They have a solid, depth chart there behind Joe Mixon too. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any tantrums or outbursts on the sidelines. He's a competitive guy, but it was time for everyone to turn the page. It's time to for the Bills to move on. Like you said, all this will come up again in a few weeks when they play each other. But besides that, it's time for everyone to turn the page.
If you're looking to turn to the page to a whole new level of Buffalo Bills coverage, come and be an insider. Shout Buffalo Bills Insider by texting 716-528-6727. Gives you 24/7 access to Ryan Talbot and Matt Parrino. We love interacting with everybody on the Insider text line, which is brought to you by Carrie C. Beyer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give them a call, 716-852-1234, or check out litrolaw.com. Okay, I want to ask you something about and discuss this a little bit. The depth chart came out yesterday. We mentioned that. Mm-hmm. Mac Hollins listed at the top of the chart, wide receiver, the first wide receiver posted. And, you never know which wide receiver position and here, whatever. But it's almost like the 5 wide receivers are interchangeable. That's the way that we've just talked about everybody eats and all that. So he's listed as the first wide receiver up there ahead of Keon Coleman. And I'm wondering if we set the table for Sunday, what are your first game expectations for Mac Hollins? Because if you look at over the course of his career, it has been mostly around 20 to 30 targets per season. Okay. 2017, he played with Philadelphia, 16 games, no starts, 22 targets, 16 catches. 2019, 23 targets, 10 catches. 22 targets and 10 catches. That was all in Philadelphia. 25 targets, 16 catches with Miami in 20. 28 targets and 14 catches in 21 with Miami. Last year with Atlanta, 30 targets, 18 catches. The one aberration was in Las Vegas, 94 targets and 57 catches, 690 yards, 4 touchdowns with the Raiders. Where does he fall in line in this receiving group in target share on Sunday and beyond, like looking at the whole season picture?
Yeah, I think there will be some games where his targets are probably higher than you expect. But I wouldn't be shocked if he fell into the 40-50 range because you have other guys. I think Khalil Shakir is going to eat up a lot of targets. You're going to have Dalton Kincaid getting a ton of targets, seeing a huge spike in his looks. I think Dawson Knox, if healthy, they'll run some 2 tight end sets. He'll get a lot of looks. So I've already mentioned Curtis Samuel. And then as the season goes on, you're going to try to get Keon Coleman out there more, not just in the red zone necessarily, not just splitting time. He'll probably take over more of that role if things go well, if he shows, how well that he's growing as a player and getting better. So you're not going to see the 90 targets minus multiple injuries. If 90-plus targets happens in Buffalo, something went very, very wrong. And that's not a knock on Mac Hollins. Mac Hollins is going to be a guy that you want on the field to block. He's going to be a guy in the field where on some games he might end up with 5, 6 receptions. But more times than not, I think you're going to see a limited target share just based on, like you said, how interchangeable a lot of these receivers are and how important it's going to be to get the backs going and get your 2 top tight ends involved.
I don't think Mac Hollins should have more targets or more snaps than Keon Coleman in any game this season. But one of the concerns that I have is that, going off of this depth chart, Sean McDermott is notorious for making rookies earn it, right? Like to feel like they're in a spot where they have to kind of continually build throughout the course of the season, not trying to give them too much too soon. And there's so much opportunity. I almost feel like when there's so much opportunity in a room like there is at receiver, it's almost like Sean McDermott goes into overdrive to like quell too much responsibility put on these young players. And I don't know. Sometimes I think that could be to these players' detriments. I think that there's, to a degree, Keon Coleman should be kind of given the opportunity to go out there and try to make plays. And I think we could be looking at a 60-40 kind of snap percentage count with advantage Hollins on Sunday. And I think it should probably be reversed.
I don't mind it in week 1, week 2, as you're letting Keon Coleman get, dip his toes in the water. I think that even by week 4, week 5, though, you do need to flip this script. You need to let Keon Coleman take the majority of the shares, even if it is 60-40 or something along those lines. I think on Sunday, though, you make sure if you get in the red zone, if the opportunity comes up, give him a chance to make a play there. Make a big first play, first impression in Buffalo would go a long way. Obviously, again, situation has to be right. You can't force feed it. We just talked about moving on from a receiver that they were force feeding the ball to at times. But early on here, as Keon Coleman is getting, situated to the live game against other opponents, I'm not upset if it is Mac Hollins getting more reps. Keon Coleman didn't play a ton of reps in the preseason either because of injuries and things like that. So I think it just takes a little bit. It might take a little bit more time, and patience will be needed.
Sean Murphy Bunting and Starling Thomas, then Garrett Williams in the slot. Those are the cornerbacks for the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday. The other piece of this is I think this is an opportunity before the going gets tough, right? Like, I mean, you're going to face a secondary in Miami, Jacksonville, Baltimore in a couple of weeks where things are going to be really challenging. 2 times against the Jets this season. So I just think building a little bit of confidence in week 1, finding a way. If I'm Joe Brady, I'm trying to figure out a package of plays or a series of opportunities for Coleman, put him in a spot to try to make plays, build some of that confidence early in the season.
And if that happens, I wouldn't be upset with that either. So you raise some good points. It will get tougher. The matchups, the situations, but that kind of leans also into I'm not against Mac Hollins staying at that 60-40 share with him being the 60 early on in some of these games against secondaries that have some high end talent where his savviness, his veteran experience might lean in favor him a little bit more, where Coleman could, face off against someone where he does get shut down, locked up, and that will make things a little bit more complicated for Buffalo. Not predicting that's exactly what will happen, but I can see why, Mac Hollins right now is at the top of the depth chart above him and why he might start the season with a few more shares in terms of overall targets.
I was actually talking to Khalil Shakir about Mac Hollins today, and I asked him if you had to explain Mac Hollins to somebody that doesn't know him at all and has never met him and like the dynamic that he brings. He's like, well, I'd call him like old school, but he's kind of like old school, like a throwback to like the cavemen and like all that kind of stuff, leaning into like his whole shtick. But like, he basically said that Mac Hollins is the guy that gets that room charged up. Like you hear him on the practice field, you hear him out in in the practice setting. I think that they're going to lean on him to really get that room dialed up. And I appreciate that piece of it. He's also a really good blocker. I think he's going to be a part of things in the run game. And I think he's a better receiver than he's given credit for. But I do tend to agree with Walter, who I think makes a good point and asks you this question, and I'll pivot it back over to you and let you answer after I give my take. You trust a wide receiver that is 30 and only had over 20 receptions once in a 7-year career over a rookie second round draft pick. And I think that's the piece of it that I'm leaning the most into is like, this is a guy that they specifically targeted with a premium asset to come in here on a year where they're moving on from two staples to be a big piece of what they do offensively. And hearing Josh Allen talk about Keon Coleman today, and Coleman talk about it as well, it feels like he's ready. Like he wants this opportunity. Let the guy go out there and see if he can make plays.
And I'm okay with that. But again, when it comes to rookie wide receivers, more times than not, they start off pretty slow. I think there are 3 special receivers in this draft class. They might be the exception to the rule, but there were some guys in last year's draft class that were hyped up, beyond belief going into the regular season. And some of them had okay seasons. Some of them didn't show as well as they thought. Jackson Smith and Jigba ended up with like 60 plus receptions, 600 yards, 4 touchdowns. But if you remember, there were some that thought he was the best receiver in this draft class. He was going to really help in Seattle, take them over the top. Rookies start off slow. So yeah, right now I would trust a 30-year-old receiver that's a better blocker, a more seasoned blocker, a guy that the Bills have the utmost confidence in. This is a short term right now. I think as the season goes on, they would lean more into Keon Coleman, giving him those opportunities. But these next few weeks are against great secondaries more times than not. You want to splash Coleman in and give him opportunities? 100%, I'm on board with that. I just get Buffalo's rationale in terms of letting a guy with experience who, when given an opportunity to be a bigger contributor in the passing game, did help stand out a little bit in Las Vegas.
What's the over under on rushing yards this Sunday for the Bills for you? Where are you placing it? You don't have to know the actual betting line.
No, I don't know the actual betting, but I'm just trying to think right now in terms of, Allen, Cook. I say they end up with, I'll give the number at 140.
140 rushing yards. I'm with you.
Yeah,
I think that the Bills are going to be able to really aggressively run at the Arizona Cardinals. I think you worry about Josh Allen and maybe they dial up a few runs for him, but I really think it's going to be about James Cook in this game. Like, to me, that's the piece of the puzzle. Like, everybody's talking about that. We were talking about the wide receivers here for a good 10 minutes and, the Hollins Coleman split and everything like that. I think it's going to be a steady dose of James Cook, Ty Johnson. Ray Davis listed as that running back number 3. Not really surprised about that, Ryan. He had a great summer,
yeah.
but the more you go back and look at Ty Johnson last year, there's a reason they prioritized him. There's a reason they brought him back. And I think that, there's a good chance that Ty Johnson has a little bit of a role in this game on Sunday.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that too. And sometimes with these depth charts, if things are close or even, you list the veteran ahead. I think Ray Davis has proved, though, that he can come in as a blocker, come in as a runner, a pass catcher. So all 3 backs are going to have their opportunities to make some plays on Sunday, and I think that's pretty exciting.
All right. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe as well. Over 1,000 people watching on a Wednesday evening. I'm heading over to Sunny Reds in Lackawanna to pod with my guy, Pat Moran. He's also having on Howard Simon, which is going to be great. We can't wait for that in a little while. Ryan won't be there. Bummer, but it's kind of a long drive. He's got school tomorrow. So there's that.
Right.
But I think we will be doing a little podcasting on Saturday. So more details on that. Follow our good buddy Joe Kroom is putting together an event. Follow him on social media. I think Eric Wood is actually going to be making an appearance there as well. I think Ryan and I are going to stop by. So come out to that. I want to take a couple insider questions before we get out of here. First one comes from our good buddy David. From what I recall, Kansas City in part won the Super Bowl due to a really good defense. Definitely. When will the Bills defense, coached by a defensive-minded person, be able to be a defense that can bail out the offense, especially perhaps now, from time to time, and ride up in the playoffs and pressure the quarterback when really needed? I feel like I have almost given up there. 2 years ago, it felt like our defense was elite at times. Then Jordan Phillips got hurt, later Von Miller and others. The piece of this, the first thing that you have to talk about when you talk about Kansas City's defense is, sure, Steve Spagnuolo is this genius, right? Like this guy that puts together great game plans. He's one of the elite defensive minds in the game. but he's got superstars, Ryan. He's got Chris Jones in the middle. He's had some really good pass rushers on the outside over the years. I mean, Frank Clark was eating there on the outside for many years. But he's also got players at the second and third level. You think about a guy like L'Jarius Sneed, who's no longer there. We'll see how they respond to that. At the second level, Nick Bolton's been a really good linebacker for them. To me, the Bills need their superstar players to play like superstars in big games. That means Ed Oliver's got to show up in that game a little bit better last year. The Bills have to better position him for that game. Terrell Bernard, their burgeoning superstar middle linebacker, he wasn't on the field. And then, Rasul Douglas, we've learned the last couple of days, reporting from Ty Dunn over at golongtd.com, that he played on a partially torn MCL in that game. He wasn't even 100%. Christian Benford wasn't even available. Dane Jackson had to play. So part of it is being healthy at that time of the year, figuring out a way to keep your guys healthy. But you can have all the great defensive minds in the game. In the end of the day, and I think even Von Miller said this today in his press conference, it's like the players play. You can't make a special magic play to make up for the fact that, players just have to make plays in the end.
And that's fair. I think it's a middle ground, because this defense has been very good in the regular season under Sean McDermott. Whether it's been Leslie Frazier as the DC, or whether it's been last year with McDermott calling the plays as the head coach, and you're hoping that continues under Babbage. But this team does come up small in the playoffs on the defense side of the ball, giving up way too many points after the way they play throughout the regular season. And some of that maybe falls on the way that they the play calling in game, but a lot of it has been the injuries too. You look at what Von Miller was at that point in the season last year. He actually flashed a little bit late in the season, but the pass rush was not great. Leonard Floyd was not great at that point of the season. Ed Oliver disappeared in that game. You mentioned no Bernard. The list went on and on and on. If they can be healthy late this season, make the playoffs, I feel like there will be enough there between the coaching, the game planning, and the talent where this could finally be that year. But I understand why he would be upset, because this is a defensive head coach. And if there's been one area where they've come up short every year in the playoffs, it's on the defensive side of the ball, with Josh Allen having to play hero ball in the sense that he keeps his team in every game, essentially, and the defense lets them down in the end.
Another question on the insider text line. How did the Bills miss so badly, or we, as in like media fans, miss so badly on Daquan Hardy and his performance at cornerback in camp? At one point, we were all thinking we had a diamond in the rough who could back up Taron Johnson, maybe even eventually be his predecessor. I'm adding that part of it. I mean, I think we've even talked about that. It's an interesting conversation, Ryan, because I felt like Daquan Hardy's line was directly up from the start of training camp all the way till the time that, I thought he was the biggest surprise cut. And I think part of it is like, we didn't think enough about the reason the Bills drafted him in the 6th round. I mean, it was predominantly for his ability to return kicks. And this is a team that has found talent at the cornerback positions, at the safety positions, everywhere. So I don't think with Taron Johnson just signing an extension that his replacement is necessarily on the mind of Brandon Beane, or even factoring into final 53-man roster projections, a decision entering that conversation in 2-3 years. I mean, a front office might not even be here in 2 or 3 years if things don't go right over the next couple.
Yeah, they told us from day one. They drafted him for his returnability on day 3 of the draft. What he could do at cornerback would just be kind of like the sprinkles on top, so to speak. He made some nice plays at cornerback at training camp. There's no denying that. Pass breakups, getting in on plays. I thought he was all around the football a lot in the preseason too. His size, though, just missing some balls when he tries to bat them away, not just missing some potential interceptions. But in the return game, they never had full faith. They talked about the decision making, and while it improved in over the course of the preseason, but it was not at the point where they wanted it to be. They weren't sure he'd be able to field those punts with the swirling winds. They weren't sure that he would make the right decision on a punt, maybe inside the 10. Are you going to just let it bounce and go into the end zone? Or is he going to catch it and then run backwards to try to make a play? That is what a lot of their decision probably came down to, is we're not getting enough out of him as a return man right now. and that would be his major role as a rookie had he made this roster.
And I will say, even watching him out at practice, like the ball security issues are definitely there with him. Like, I mean, like there's times when he, fields punts, fields kicks, and you're just unsure about the stability there. Like in putting the ball on the ground. I mean, that's going to be a huge thing that I think is talked about over the next couple of weeks in the NFL as that new kickoff is finally employed, and we see that in games. It's going to be interesting to watch, and that's just an area of Hardy's game that just hasn't come far enough in the Bills' mind. And I actually applaud Bean for being aggressive and not just saying, okay, we drafted this guy. We thought he could do it at a high level. He might not be reaching here, but maybe he's here and we'll accept that and we'll take it into the season because we drafted him. No, he was aggressive. He went out and he made a trade to get an option in here that they think that is better. And I think that's a really important part of the game. I mean, for a team in transition offensively, whether it be identity wise or skill position player wise, to be able to put that offense in advantageous positions with the return game, I think is a huge plus if you could do it.
It'd be huge. It would be massive for this team if that happens. If Codrington comes in and looks the part, even if he gets a kick out to Buffalo's 40, it doesn't have to be midfield. You give them that starting field position, good things are going to happen more times than not. If he rips off an even bigger return as a kick returner or a punt returner, that's just an added benefit. So they're trying to hit those home runs. They're trying to go the route they did the last time they added a return man that had previously been with the Jets, and a guy like Andre Robertson. I'm not sure Codrington will ever be that because Roberts was special in his prime as a return man, but I don't mind the Bills swinging on a guy that really showed up big time in the preseason as a kick returner, punt returner, when all they had to do was swap late 2026 picks to get the guy. The upside is there. We'll see if it pays off for them. But it's a move that a team like Buffalo should have been making or looking to make because field position is going to be massive for this team this season.
It is going to be a massive week right here on Shout at Buffalo Bills Football Podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube before you go. We'll be back with a couple more episodes this week, so keep it locked onto all the platforms so you know when we're going live. He's Ryan Talbot. I'm Matt Parrino. Active week. Enjoy it. Football is finally here. We'll have football every single day starting tomorrow until the Bills open, or college football on Saturday. We'll see you soon. Take care, everybody.